Hi, everyone, and welcome to a holiday edition of Weather or Not. I'm WABC Chief Meteorologist Lee Goldberg, and we are here, as always, to give you the forecast and to talk about all topics, weather and not at times. But right now, our major focus is on this holiday travel. Wouldn't you know it? We have this snooze and cruise November for the first couple of weeks, and you lead into the holiday, and bang, we got a really sizable storm. And we're in a month right here where we're on a pace to set the driest November all time, or at least in the top 5 or so. And we're going to wipe out that deficit, which is nearly 2 inches of rainfall, one fell swoop, with this storm that is, of course, leading into the Thanksgiving holiday on the worst possible time into some of the big travel weather. So we're going to dissect this storm coming up, everything you need to know, talk travel, talk Thanksgiving forecast, parade forecast as well, and even travel on the backside of the holiday as well. You're going to hear about the pattern going into early December, which looks a little interesting. I know you've been hearing about El Nino, warm, probably not as much snow. Maybe not the case. We'll see what this early signal means. But I need some help to do all that, so why not pull in meteorologist Jeff Smith, my teammate, who we've been covering storms since '07.
That's right. Do these days leading up to Thanksgiving always have a target on their back? I feel like they really do.
It's so true. Whether it's the drama about it, the balloon's going to be able to fly high enough, or all about your travel. So incredible. First of all, I'll start out with my welcome board with Happy Thanksgiving on this Weather or Not, and let's jump right into it and waste no time. So, Jeff, I thought we'd put up the big picture and just the jet stream or steering winds for our viewers. And one of the things we're looking at, if you're a meteorologist watching, you clearly know what this is. If you're one of our viewers and we show this jet stream all the time, some of the key points, we're looking at dips in the jet stream or trough, bridges too. Anything else you wanted to point out?
And the orientation of those dips. So right now, that dip over the central part of the country is kind of oriented from Minnesota down to Texas. That's positively tilted. If it starts going neutral and then, more importantly, like negatively tilted, and you'll see what I mean by that, that's when you get a more vigorous disturbance moving on through a lot of rising motion in the atmosphere and more rainfall, more wind.
And that's a good setup there. Number one, to the north, yes, that chilly air is retreating, but there's still enough to get rid of. I mean, we're talking about some of our first freeze warnings in New York City leading into this storm. So obviously, there's a little chilly air we'll have to scour out. It's not the main theme of the storm, but something we'll have to watch. But like you said, with the actual sort of angle of that dip in the jet stream, everything is moving along.
Right. For now, right. And it's almost like right at the last minute, it tries to go neutral and then negative. And maybe the rain doesn't end before dawn on Wednesday. Maybe it bleeds into the early daylight hours, especially north and east of New York City. So we'll have to see if it lingers a little bit. And that's why we've been going with the AccuWeather alert into Wednesday morning. So at least there's going to be some big puddles around from that 2 inches plus of rain that we get Tuesday night. Maybe some rain falling from the sky as well early Wednesday.
You know, and that's a good point you bring up. If there's some last minute change in this orientation, is there a little funny business or pulse at the end where, you know, all of a sudden, there's going to be some thunderstorms down in the Mid-Atlantic. Now, are there some that get into southern New Jersey? Do we get some rainfall rates where all of a sudden, you know, it's over an inch an hour? Not out of the question.
Right. I wouldn't be surprised at all. I'd have to see what the flash flood guidance is, considering we've had such dry weather recently. But you mentioned, you know, how strong this storm is, and to our south, all that energy. There's going to be severe weather over the southeast, and that's going to cause a lot of delays. I mean, you think of a big hub like Atlanta, one of the busiest airports in the world. There's probably going to be some delays just due to that, a big domino effect across the country.
If this storm could produce a tornado in Arizona, you know, in the Pacific, right?
Yeah.
And then you have that tornadic activity down in the deep south today. You always have to respect the history of a storm like this coming through. So when we look at the overall setup into Thanksgiving, much different. Okay, now all of a sudden this thing is plowed away. And one thing last week is the chilly shot looked a lot stronger. So I'm not as concerned about like in the extreme cold or even below normal weather for Thanksgiving.
It looked so much more direct from the north last week, and now it's more of a zonal flow heading into Thanksgiving. So yeah, probably near normal on Turkey Day. One thing I was watching, you know, over the weekend, the GFS was trying to blow up the secondary low off of the coast. That would affect us at least with some stronger winds on Thanksgiving. That thankfully seems to have gone to pass.
And we will absolutely get you a planner for the parade, which, I mean, it's brisk, but it is encouraging. Just looking pattern overall, because this is kind of how we forecast. I mean, when we look at our forecast, we go from big picture and then to some of the details. So, you know, where you hear a lot about models when we're talking about weather, and that's been a buzzword, which it's good and bad. I'm glad the viewer knows that we're using some computer guidance. But it's first good to start out with our own judgment of what we think the pattern looks like, maybe even predict what we think the models should show, and then we go to that computer model.
And the models are so much sharper in the upper air because you're not dealing with the friction with the land. So the models are naturally going to be more accurate at that level. So we tend to start at the top and then work our way down to the bottom and kind of predict what we think the model is going to show at the surface along the way, like you said.
So post-Thanksgiving travel is not set in stone because there's some energy coming out of the Pacific. There's been some indications that a lot of that could be suppressed. Maybe we have to be careful by the end of the weekend that something does. Maybe at least we're on the northern fringe of that. We'll see.
I know at times it was trying to show, the models were trying to show something more significant Saturday, but thankfully that seems to have been lost.
So we'll keep you posted on that. All right, now to more of the specifics of this storm leading into Thanksgiving. And I've broken it down to a few categories here, 4 categories of impact: rain, wind, flooding, and also, a little wintry edge that's well to the north and west and higher in elevation. In terms of the rainfall, the biggest thing I'm concerned about with this is that it's packed into a short period of time.
Right. Thankfully, that period of time is during the night when hopefully most people wouldn't be doing much traveling.
Yeah.
But it's packed into such a short period of time, and all that moisture is going to fall in about, like you said, 6 to 8 hours and could be upwards. I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple of 3-inch totals, especially if you get some convection over southern New Jersey. Just
like you said, if that upper air last minute intensification is realized. These gusts are primarily at the coast, especially south of New York City, but could there be a 35, 40 mile per hour gust in the city? That's not out of the question. Maybe a 50 mile per hour gust at the coast. So could that mean some tree limbs down?
Right. I was reading the inversion is pretty low, so that can allow some of the stronger gusts to get down to the surface a little bit easier Tuesday night, especially in some of the heavier downpours. Eastern Long Island, I would probably favor with those strong southeast winds. Maybe a gust 40 to 50 out there, certainly.
In terms of the flooding, mainly street flooding. I think our rivers, streams, and creeks can handle it, but those rainfall rates could certainly cause some ponding, and that's going to linger into Wednesday morning. And that's, again, one of the reasons why you extended that alert into Sunday.
And there's a lot of leaves on the trees still along the coast and in the city, and that means that's going to be clogging drains. So there'll be some puddles that last a little bit longer than we want them to.
It's good advice for storm prep, is to clear those storm drains. And I meant to say that lingering into Wednesday morning with the flooding. That snow will mix with a little rain, a little snow, sleet. There might be some slick spots. Would it be up Route 17, I-80? I saw some potential ice accretion across I-80 in central Pennsylvania, like Williamsport West.
Right. I mean, the problem is tonight's probably going to be our coldest night of the season so far across the entire region. So you're going to get some of these places well north and west dropping into the lower 20s. So even if they rise into like the mid-30s during the day, the actual surfaces are probably going to be cold enough to support a little bit of slippery travel.
All right, so let's talk about the evolution of this. We start Tuesday, which again, you can definitely shoehorn travel locally through the midday, even in the afternoon hours, at least here. But if you're thinking, okay, I want to wait till later in the day and travel out I-80, look what you could run into there once you get west of Scranton.
Yeah, that doesn't look good. I mean, anywhere west of our viewing area, even during the day Tuesday, is going to be pretty dicey. But I think if you can get your travel done, first half of the day into the first half of the afternoon through about 2 or 3 o'clock. After that, all bets are off. We're going to get that preset moving in pretty quickly.
Yeah, so we'll start late day. Maybe this is close to sunset. We got the rain moving in. By the way, you notice the snow and a little bit of mix in the higher elevations of the Catskills off to the north and west. At that point, the brunt of the storm, or at least the heavier rainfall rates, is really working over the Appalachians, basically, and also working down into parts of the northwest suburbs of D.C.
Yeah, it'll be fighting some dry air initially, too, I think. So that leading edge of rain might be very light. That's coming in late during the daylight hours here in the city. So it's all about overnight tomorrow night, I think.
Yes. So let's say late evening it starts to ramp up here, and we start to get into a pretty good driving rain. At the same time, the wind gusts at that point should at least be 25, 30 miles an hour. So a good windswept rain is trying to kick in later in the night. And then you can see what's going on here. I mean, middle of the night. This is the type of storm that might wake you out of your sleep.
Right. I mean, you don't like to see reds and oranges on our Futurecast, and that's what we have in spades later on tomorrow night into the wee hours of Wednesday morning. I mean, across our entire viewing area. So that is just a time to stay in if you can. Not going to be pretty out there.
I mean, even look at the signature of what you see the way the little red splotches look like. I mean, maybe little squall lines or thunder showers, something convective in there. Yeah, a little bit. So definitely some wind that's possible there. Maybe a little better south of I-80 going right through New York City over to Long Island. And look at this. So if you wake up 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, you've slept through the storm.
Exactly, especially from the city and points south and west. Yeah, on Long Island, maybe you're still getting some downpours into Connecticut, but I mean, this thing moves out as quickly as it moves in. It's out of here, basically gone by dawn in most of the area.
Absolutely. So, I mean, look at some of these rainfall months. Very impressive, sort of what we talked about in the idea that maybe 1.5 to 2.5. The lower totals may be north.
I wouldn't be shocked if areas to the south end up a little higher than what's shown there, just because of the convective element down there.
Yep, absolutely. And then in terms of, I mean, I haven't used snowfall. I mean, this is good for Adirondacks, Green and White Mountains of New England. This may be a little overdone in some of the highest elevations of Ulster County, but you get the idea. Mainly on colder surfaces, there might be some slushy accumulation there.
Yeah, a little early start to ski season in some areas, right? Especially up in New England.
A white Thanksgiving. All right, so there's the futurecast gusts, by the way, as it starts to get rather breezy and you sense a storm coming in on Tuesday. We see our winds really going to town here after 11 o'clock at night. Yeah, look at the gusts along the coast, and you can see, look at that. I mean, that's pre-dawn hours there. And look at the sharp cutoff, too. That's pretty amazing.
Right, and the winds about 1,000 feet up, 925 millibars are going to be about 50 to 65 miles per hour. So the question is, what percentage of that can make it all the way down to the surface with some of those heavy downpours? And this is showing, some of those high gusts maybe being realized over eastern Long Island.
And if you look at just the overall wind vectors around Trenton, you can see that triple point, which is essentially, for our viewers that are watching, there's another low that could form along this, which essentially this glorified cold front coming through. And at that point, we may see an enhancement in our precipitation there as we go just last minute there as that low comes on top of us.
A little parting shot there.
Yep.
Dawn on Wednesday.
Yep. So that moves away. All right. So we've now improved here on Wednesday. I just wanted to sort of give a whole summary to everybody now that what we've gone through. The timing is late Tuesday into early Wednesday. We're really focusing on the brunt being Tuesday night. If I had to put a time period on, see if you agree with me, Jeff, I was thinking about 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. being that 8-hour window that may be the worst in New York City.
No, that sounds about right. It's going to take a little while to get the rain really ramping up during the evening, but yeah, by late evening, especially 11, midnight, we're going to town.
Rain and wind, 1.5 to 2.5 inches of rainfall. Maybe some spots get locally 3, and there could be some 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts, mainly along the coast. The impact, of course, the street flooding, down tree limbs a concern. Jeff talked about the leaves in the storm drains potentially clogging things up too. Slippery roads because of those leaves, and of course travel delays by air and road. And I mean, listen, the travel delays are already building up even during the day even if we're not getting bad weather there. The entire Northeast is certainly going to be snarled up, and there you can see right from the Ohio Valley, and like you said, a big hub like Atlanta.
Yeah, even Charlotte, Detroit. I mean, a lot of hubs in there that can be affected.
All right, let's now pivot to our Thanksgiving weather. So we have had it so easy. So we were due for maybe a little bit of a speed bump here, but this storm is going to be gone by Thanksgiving, but we're not, I was looking at the 54 and 56, and initially I was just going to say to you, we're not going to be warm this year. Right. We're probably going to crack the 50-degree mark.
Far. I mean, it'll be about as average as you can get for Thanksgiving with 51, 52. Yeah.
Little Thanksgiving history, of course, we had the big rain in 2020, big winds back in 2019. You were recalling, though, your favorite back
Oh, my goodness. 1989. Snowstorm on Thanksgiving. I remember I was in southeastern New England, Plymouth, Mass., and we got like an all-out blizzard. We got almost a foot of snow. I know New York City got like 4 to 6 inches, but parts of Long Island got near blizzard conditions, too, in that. Remember the cold air leading up to that?
Yes.
It was so cold the day before. There was a little pond right down the street. It was frozen solid in November. Crazy.
That is amazing. And of course, we remember back to the big problem that we had years ago with the big wind event and the balloons hitting some of the light poles and the injuries that happened on Central Park West. So we're very cognizant of the wind criteria here. Right now, here's our forecast. Lots of sunshine that day. It's brisk and cool. The sustained winds are about 10 to 20 miles an hour. There may be some gusts 25. Could I rule out a gust to 30? Not out of the question. 52, but that's not at the start of the parade. Now, when we talk about balloon restrictions, it's if sustained winds are greater than 23 or gusts greater than 34, then we talk about restrictions. The last time the balloons were grounded, though, back in 1971.
Yeah, and call me old-fashioned. I got my teletype here. I got my printout of the
it.
NBM, National Blend of Models. It takes into account 30 different computer models, basically averages them. So right now it's going for winds about 19 knots in gusts.
All right.
In Central Park on Thursday morning. So that's low 20s miles per hour. It should be below. It should be below the threshold. I mean, sustained is like 15.
Not too bad. I mean, so here's our official forecast right now. We're going for temperatures climbing through the 40s during the parade. Maybe by the end of the parade, approaching 50 degrees. Again, the sustained northwest to 20, gusts to 25. It's certainly brisk. The balloon handrails will hold on tight, but right now we were thinking Snoopy will travel at normal height.
Right. The only thing, you were talking about that little triple point that was developing near Trenton.
Yeah.
If that develops quickly offshore, then all of a sudden you talk about the gradient being a little bit stronger. So there's a little bit room for error, I think, in this forecast.
And that's something that was hinted at, although abandoned by some of our modeling
exactly,
last week. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, all right, so we'll be cognizant of that. Again, future wind gusts. All right, let's go ahead and now look past Thanksgiving a little bit. We talked a little bit about the features we might be watching, one that maybe by the end of the upcoming weekend. But overall, as this gets past, may have to look for a little bit more. Right now, I did notice the polar vortex is weakening a little bit, and a weaker polar vortex may mean that some more Arctic air may get down into North America. You may think if you're watching, well, wouldn't it be the stronger polar vortex would be colder? No, that's not the way it works. And right now, the signal post-Thanksgiving into early December is clearly below average in the Northeast.
Yeah, after the turkey leftovers are done, I mean, we're going to be pretty chilly out there in early December. And also, I noticed the North Atlantic Oscillation, which indicates blocking in the atmosphere, goes negative again.
Okay.
It's been kind of positive the past week or two, which has been more of a zonal fast flow. If it goes negative, then you get some blocking. You get some weather patterns that can stick around a little bit longer.
And, okay, so that would also potentially mean slower storms that don't exit quickly. One thing about this storm that we have for pre-Thanksgiving, it's moving right along. We talked about the damage being done in 6 to 8 hours. If we have some blocking, slower moving storm, the atmosphere is more, the jet stream is more buckled, all of a sudden could we have some interesting weather. And it's interesting that the Climate Prediction Center, it has us in this near normal, but look how we're wedged. It's an above normal signal as close as the Delmarva. It's below normal over the Great Lakes. So are we kind of in a bit of a battle zone there where we're going to have to be careful for some early season, maybe interior snowfall?
Yeah, you know what's funny about that? That's almost a proxy for an El Nino pattern there too.
That's exactly right.
You get the more precipitation off to the south, and maybe we get into a pattern where there's some mid-Atlantic snow threats.
Yes. Good point.
Especially if we get some cold air.
Yeah, and we did talk about that in a previous whether or not, there's been a lot of talk, El Nino and below normal, but we've had some of our biggest storms during El Nino years.
2016,
yes.
That's what I think of, biggest storm we've ever had in New York City.
That's exactly right.
95, 96.
Yes, so there are a lot of examples. Sometimes it's, it comes all at once and that you get your seasonal snowfall out of, 2 or 3 storms, but, not out of the question. It doesn't mean that we won't have some snowfall. Jeff, this has been a great discussion.
Fantastic. Time flew by here.
Right. I really appreciate you joining me on Whether or Not today. It's not the last time for sure. We're hoping to discuss more weather patterns throughout the winter.
Be happy to join you again.
Thank you. And Jeff and I, of course, always team up during our big weather events. So thanks again, Jeff. Appreciate it. All right, so that is this edition of Whether or Not, your holiday edition. I hope you got everything you needed in terms of your holiday travel. We'll continue to update the forecast, of course, frequently on ABC7 and Y and on all our shows on Channel 7. But in the meantime, thank you for watching Whether or Not. Have a safe and healthy holiday with your families. Be careful and definitely take our advice in terms of your travel and keep it safe. And we'll see you next time on Whether or Not, Rain or Shine.